So the project 3 from this is doing a non-linear PowerPoint. It's very different than a regular linear PowerPoint that goes just on slide 1, then to slide 2, then 3, then 4. And what this ends up being is so the non-linear has it where it's much more interactive. It is people where a viewer is looking at it, they're clicking on links, it's jumping from slide 1 to slide 7, down to slide 12, back up to slide 1. And you'll see how that works, but it's much more interactive. So that requires you to do a planning sheet. If you just jump right into a PowerPoint doing a non-linear, it does not work. You'll get confused. The hyperlinks don't work. You really have to have it planned out. So your step 1 here is to open up your planning sheet. Planning sheet looks like this, and it's actually broken down into actual sections for each slide. So if you start at slide 1 and you scroll all the way down, it has you plan out all the way up to slide number 27. Now, this planning sheet is meant to be just purely text. I've seen people take like 3 days on this, and it should take you 1 or 2 days, maybe 2 days at the most. For example, slide 1 right here, where it's talking about the title slide. The actual slide itself is going to be much more impressive, but really all you need is the title of your game, which let's say it's Canada, so it's a Jeopardy Canada or Canada Jeopardy, your actual name, what period and the date created. So simple information. So when it comes around to the PowerPoint, you actually have the information there. Slide number 2 is a welcome slide, and this is where we will eventually put in our movie from project number 2, but we're not there yet, so we are instead going to have sort of welcome messages, and I'll show you a little demo of that. Slide 3 is a rule slide, and slide 4 is where you start coming up with your game board. Now, doing some of this without even seeing what an example looks like is why on the website I have sort of an example here. This is not interactive. It's not linkable. You can't link on things. But if you click on it, here's an example of a title slide. All right, here's an example of a welcome message. And you can kind of see this actually says it right here. The rules, if you can't come up with rules for a Jeopardy PowerPoint because you've never played one or haven't created one obviously before, here are some good examples of some kind of 4 rules that you would want to explain. Because you got to remember, people are playing this without you there to explain it. So you should have your rules specific enough that 2 people clicking on your Jeopardy could figure out how it works. When you get to slide 4, this is where you have the Jeopardy game board. Up here at the top are the category names, right? And if you notice here, like this first one says recalculating. That was somebody else's creative alternative name for location. I don't know exactly how that is, but you can see how much more creative that is. One easy way to do that is if your country actually speaks a different language, let's say your country speaks Spanish, you could just get the translation for each of these. So if I wanted to highlight location, go over to Google Translate, type in location and get the Spanish for location, and it's locación, then I would go over here and put in locación. Now, if you have a country that uses like Arabic or a different alphabet, we can't actually type that in because we don't have that alphabet on these computers, but Google Translate will allow you to copy and paste it, and it does work. Keep in mind, you're probably going to need to translate it. So maybe in parentheses, if somebody doesn't know what locación means, you could in parentheses say, oh yeah, that's location, right? And that's talking about the game board. So all you're coming up with here on slide 4 for the planning sheet is literally just the titles of what would be on the game board. All right. So as you then go down, these are the question slides, and this is kind of the bulk of it. And this is where you have a lot of people that spend a ton of time on this, and it should not take that much time. You've already done all the research for this. So if you look right here, it actually says questions from the data collection outline, Roman numeral 1. Here's your data collection outline. Here's Roman numeral 1 right here. You actually have 5 pieces of data. You only need to use 3 of those to come with questions. So as we're going through this, for example, if I wanted to ask a question about like what continent is Canada on, that could be my first question within category 1. So one of the big mistakes people do is they just start randomly coming up with questions throughout their entire data collection sheet, when really those first 3 questions right here for slides 5, 6, and 7 should only be from location. It seems simple now that I'm saying it, but then you'll be in the middle of it and you'll just start coming up with it. Another thing is look at your questions would it be possible for anybody to ever really have memorized the geographic coordinates of your country? Probably not. So the example here shows a great example of a question that would work on, where you actually use that piece of data, but you're not really asking about that piece of data. So this one is about Thailand, says here are the coordinates, but what continent is it on? So it's actually making use of one of these other pieces of data you actually collected. So you collected the data, you might as well use it, but it's actually only asking about continent. All right. Make sure that it's somebody who didn't do the research will be able to read your question and understand what in the world it's talking about. So don't just say, what's the time conversion for Canada? Nobody knows what that means. Ask, when it's 1 o'clock in Chicago, what time is it in the capital of Canada? That would be a fully thought out question. Then when you do in your choices, remember these are all multiple choice. So one of these should be the right answer. 2 of them should be the wrong. And then down here where it says answer, actually put in what the right answer is so that you remember when you're creating a question like this, 2 of these are wrong, 1 of these are right, and then they link to either things that say, okay, you did a good job, you got it right, or wrong, try it again. That's all further down the road though. So that is the planning sheet. That should take about a day. When you are ready to move on to the next part, which is part 2, this is key. All of you know how to use PowerPoint. You need to now follow these tutorials so it leads you through using some of the more advanced features. You got a little exposure to this during Essential Tech last year in 6th grade, using Slide Masters and things like that. But if you don't know how to use it, or this is probably only the second time you've ever had exposure to Slide Masters or Title Masters, please follow through these tutorials. If you have no idea what those are, that's why these tutorials are there.